You cannot chase two things at the same time and expect to catch both. The moment you decide to chase approval, you sacrifice respect. The moment you pursue respect, you must be willing to let go of approval. This is one of the most important principles I have discovered in my years of studying successful people and transformational leadership. Look at the person next to you and tell them, you were not born to fit in, you were born to stand out. The greatest tragedy in life is not death, it's living a life without purpose, chasing the approval of people who don't even know their own purpose. Most people live their entire lives trying to be accepted, trying to be liked, trying to gain approval from others. They modify their behavior, change their appearance, adjust their opinions, and compromise their values, all to hear someone say, I like you. But here's the shocking truth. Respect and approval are not the same thing. And constantly seeking approval is the fastest way to lose respect, both from others and from yourself. There's a disease spreading in our society today. It's not a physical ailment, but a psychological one that's crippling potential and destroying dreams. I call it approval addiction. Look around you. Social media has created a culture where people measure their worth by likes, comments, and followers. We've become so obsessed with being accepted that we've forgotten who we really are. When you chase approval, you give away your power. You hand over the keys to your happiness to others. You're essentially saying, my value is determined by your opinion of me. This is a dangerous position to be in because opinions change like the weather. Today they approve, tomorrow they don't. If your sense of self is tied to these fluctuating opinions, you live on an emotional roller coaster. The approval seeker is like a chameleon, constantly changing colors to blend with different environments. With one group, they have one personality. With another group, they become someone else. They have no true identity because they're always conforming to what they think others want them to be. Is that how you want to live? Always wondering what mask to wear next? Approval seeking is exhausting. It's a full-time job with no pay, no benefits, and no retirement plan. You work around the clock trying to please everyone, only to discover that it's impossible. While you're busy pleasing one person, you're disappointing another. It's a game you can never win. Let me tell you about a young woman I mentored. She was talented, intelligent, and had incredible potential, but she was paralyzed by the fear of disapproval. Before making any decision, she would consult at least 5 people. If someone disagreed with her choice, she would immediately change her mind. Her life was not her own. It belonged to the committee of people whose approval she sought. Years passed, and while her peers advanced in their careers and personal growth, she remained stuck, unable to move forward without consensus from others. She had sacrificed her progress at the altar of approval. Another problem with approval seeking is that it makes you compromise. You start saying yes when you should say no. You tolerate behavior that you should confront. You silence your true thoughts because they might not be popular. Each compromise might seem small in the moment, but they accumulate over time, eroding your integrity and diminishing your sense of self. Perhaps most damaging is how approval seeking disconnects you from your purpose. Every person is born with unique abilities, talents, and a contribution to make. But when you're focused on gaining approval, you're not focused on fulfilling your purpose. You're playing to the crowd instead of answering your calling. And a life without purpose, regardless of how much approval it receives, is ultimately unfulfilling. What is respect? Respect is not a warm, fuzzy feeling. It's not a pat on the back or a thumbs up on social media. Respect is a deep acknowledgement of your value, integrity, and authenticity. It's what people feel when they recognize that you stand for something greater than popularity. Respect is earned through consistency, integrity, and the courage to be true to your values even when it's difficult. It comes from making hard choices, speaking truth when it would be easier to remain silent, and standing firm when others are swayed by the crowd. Unlike approval, which can be given based on superficial qualities or momentary emotions, respect develops over time. It's built on a foundation of character and sustained by actions that align with your stated values. People might not always like what you do or say, but they will respect your authenticity and conviction. The interesting paradox is that self-respect must precede the respect of others. If you don't respect yourself enough to honor your own values, how can you expect others to respect you? Self-respect means being willing to disappoint others rather than betray yourself. It means establishing healthy boundaries and having the courage to enforce them. I once knew a business leader who was initially very popular with his team. He approved every request for time off, never challenged underperformance, and avoided difficult conversations. People liked him, but they didn't respect him. When tough times came and difficult decisions had to be made, his team did not stand behind him. He had their approval, but not their respect. And in the moment of truth, approval proved worthless. Contrast this with another leader I observed. She was not concerned with being liked. She made unpopular decisions when necessary, gave honest feedback even when it was difficult to hear, and held people accountable to high standards. Initially, some team members resisted her leadership style, but over time, they came to deeply respect her because they knew she was guided by principles rather than popularity. When challenges arose, her team was willing to follow her through the fire because respect had created trust. Remember this: respect has depth, approval is shallow. Respect endures, approval is fleeting. Respect empowers, approval enslaves. If you want to make a meaningful impact in this world, you must be willing to trade the shallow waters of approval for the deep ocean of respect. The pathway to respect often requires the courage to stand alone. Are you willing to be the only one standing when everyone else has taken a seat? Are you prepared to speak your truth when the room has gone silent? True leadership, the kind that earns lasting respect, is not about following the crowd or conforming to popular opinion. It's about having the courage to chart a course based on your values and vision, even when that means standing alone. History is filled with examples of respected leaders who faced disapproval, criticism, and even ridicule because they stood for what they believed in. They understood that making a difference often means making waves. Consider Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison because he refused to compromise his stance against apartheid. During those years, the approval of his oppressors was certainly not forthcoming, but his unwavering commitment to his principles earned him the respect of millions around the world. Or think about innovators like Steve Jobs, who was actually fired from the company he founded because his vision didn't align with what others wanted. He could have changed his approach to gain approval, but instead he remained true to his vision. When he eventually returned to Apple, it was his uncompromising standards and vision, the very qualities that had led to his dismissal, that transformed the company into one of the most successful in history. Standing alone doesn't mean being arrogant or dismissive of others' opinions. It means having the discernment to know when to consider input and when to follow your inner compass. It means being secure enough in your convictions that you don't need the constant validation of the crowd. I remember speaking with a young entrepreneur who had developed an innovative product. Every market analysis told him it wouldn't work. Potential investors advised him to modify his concept to make it more marketable. Friends and family cautioned him against taking such a big risk. The pressure to conform was intense, but he believed in his idea and proceeded anyway. The first year was difficult, full of challenges and disappointments, but he persisted, and today his company is revolutionizing its industry. Had he sought approval rather than respect, his vision would have died in the planning phase. Finding strength in your conviction doesn't happen automatically. It requires clarity about your values and purpose. When you know what you stand for, you'll find the courage to stand alone when necessary. This doesn't mean you'll never feel fear or doubt. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's a determination to move forward despite the fear. The next time you face a situation where the path to approval conflicts with the path to respect, ask yourself, what would I do if I wasn't afraid of disapproval? Then do that. The momentary discomfort of disapproval is a small price to pay for the lasting reward of respect, both from others and from yourself. One of the most powerful antidotes to approval seeking is a clear sense of purpose. When you know your why, others' opinions about your what and how will become less important. Purpose gives you direction, and direction eliminates distraction, including the distraction of seeking approval. Your purpose is not something you create, it's something you discover. It's connected to your natural abilities, your deepest values, and the impact you want to have on the world. Purpose answers the question, why am I here? When you can answer that question with conviction, you'll find yourself naturally moving away from approval seeking and toward respect-earning behaviors. Purpose creates focus, and focus filters out the noise of others' opinions. When you're focused on fulfilling your purpose, you simply don't have the time or energy to chase approval. You're too busy making your unique contribution to worry about whether everyone likes the way you're doing it. I often tell the story of a woman I met who worked in corporate finance for 15 years. She was successful by conventional standards, good salary, regular promotions, approval from her peers. But she felt empty inside. During a period of reflection, she realized that her true purpose was to impact young lives through education. Despite concerns from family and friends about leaving a secure career, she resigned from her position and founded an alternative school for underserved children. The initial years were challenging financially and professionally. Many questioned her decision, but today her school has changed the trajectories of hundreds of young lives. She traded the approval of her corporate peers for the respect that comes from living with purpose. Living with intention rather than reaction means making deliberate choices based on your purpose, not reflexive decisions based on others' expectations. It means asking, does this align with my purpose, rather than will this gain approval? It's about being proactive in designing your life rather than reactive to others' opinions of it. Your purpose is also your protection when criticism comes, and it will come. Your purpose serves as a shield. It reminds you why you're doing what you're doing, even when others don't understand or approve. Martin Luther King Jr. faced fierce criticism and opposition, but his purpose, creating a more just and equal society, sustained him through the disapproval. How do you discover your purpose? Start by reflecting on these questions. What natural abilities do you have that seem to come easily to you but are valuable to others? What issues or causes stir your emotions? What kind of impact do you want to have made when you reach the end of your life? The answers to these questions contain clues to your purpose. Once you've discovered your purpose, articulate it clearly and let it guide your decisions. When faced with choices, large or small, ask yourself, which option best aligns with my purpose? This purpose-driven decision-making will naturally lead you away from approval-seeking and toward respect-earning actions. Authenticity is the cornerstone of respect. When people sense that you're genuine, that your outer actions align with your inner values, they may not always agree with you, but they will respect you. Building an authentic life means developing personal standards that exceed others' expectations. Most people live by external standards, rules, customs, and expectations set by others. They aim to meet these standards to gain approval. But respected individuals live by internal standards that are often higher than what others expect. They don't ask, what's the minimum I need to do to be accepted? Instead, they ask, what's the right thing to do according to my values? Consistency between words and actions is essential for authenticity. It's not enough to talk about your values. You must live them, especially when it's difficult. People watch what you do more than they listen to what you say. When your actions contradict your words, you lose credibility and with it, respect. I once worked with a leader who often spoke about the importance of work-life balance. He would emphasize in company meetings how employees should prioritize their families and personal well-being. Yet this same leader would send emails at midnight, work every weekend, and subtly pressure his team to adopt the same habits. His actions spoke louder than his words, creating a culture of burnout. Despite his rhetoric about balance, he lost the respect of his team because of this inconsistency. Building an authentic life also means creating value instead of seeking validation. Approval seekers ask, what do I need to do to be liked? Value creators ask, what can I contribute that will make a difference? When you focus on creating value, solving problems, serving others, improving conditions, respect follows naturally. People respect those who contribute, not those who merely conform. Authenticity requires radical honesty. First with yourself, then with others. You must be willing to acknowledge your strengths and weaknesses, your successes and failures. This honesty makes you relatable and trustworthy. It also frees you from the exhausting pretense that approval-seeking demands. Remember that authenticity is not an excuse for bad behavior or rudeness. Some people claim to be just keeping it real when they are actually being unkind or inconsiderate. True authenticity is always grounded in respect for others, even as it remains true to personal values. To build a more authentic life, start by identifying areas where you might be sacrificing your authenticity for approval. Are there situations where you regularly say or do things that don't align with your true values? Are there relationships where you feel you must wear a mask? These are opportunities to realign your external behaviors with your internal values, to trade the temporal comfort of approval for the lasting satisfaction of respect. One of the most practical ways to shift from approval seeking to respect earning is to establish clear boundaries. Boundaries are the lines that define where you end and others begin. They clarify what you will and will not accept in your life, work, and relationships. Learning to say no without guilt is an essential boundary-setting skill. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't align with your values or purpose, you're saying no to something that does. Approval seekers say yes indiscriminately because they fear the disapproval that might come with no. Respect earners say no when necessary because they honor their priorities and limitations. I remember coaching an entrepreneur who was struggling to grow his business despite working 16-hour days. When we examined how he spent his time, I discovered he said yes to every meeting, every favor, every request that came his way. His schedule was so cluttered with others' priorities that he had no time for his own. We worked on establishing clear boundaries around his time and energy. At first, saying no was uncomfortable while he worried about disappointing others. But as he protected more time for high-value activities, his business began to thrive. Interestingly, the respect others had for him increased as well. They saw that he valued his time and purpose, which made them value it too. Boundaries also protect your vision and values from dilution. When you're clear about what you stand for and where you're headed, you can more easily identify influences that might pull you off course. These might be relationships, opportunities, or activities that, while not inherently negative, aren't aligned with your direction. Contrary to what many approval seekers fear, strong boundaries don't repel people, they attract the right relationships. When you're clear about your values, priorities, and limits, you naturally draw people who respect these aspects of you. You also filter out relationships that would require you to compromise your authenticity. Setting boundaries requires courage, especially at first. You might worry that people will be angry, disappointed, or will withdraw their approval if you set limits. And sometimes they will. But remember, if someone's relationship with you is conditional on your having no boundaries, that's approval, not respect, and it comes at too high a price. Here are some practical steps for establishing stronger boundaries. Clarify your non-negotiables, the values, commitments, and standards you won't compromise. Practice saying no clearly and without over-explaining or apologizing. Create buffer zones in your schedule rather than booking every minute. Limit access to your time and attention, especially from people who drain rather than energize you. Be willing to experience temporary disapproval for the sake of long-term respect. As you implement these boundaries, you'll find yourself less consumed with gaining approval and more focused on living authentically. This shift is the foundation for earning genuine respect. To truly move from approval seeking to respect earning, you must transform your mindset. Your thoughts create your reality, and a mind focused on external validation will always struggle to earn genuine respect. The first shift is from external validation to internal fulfillment. Instead of asking, what will others think? Start asking, what do I believe is right? When you make decisions, let your primary consideration be alignment with your values rather than anticipation of others' reactions. This shift is challenging because approval seeking is often deeply ingrained. Many of us were conditioned from childhood to seek validation from parents, teachers, and peers. Breaking this pattern requires conscious effort and consistent practice. But with each decision made from internal conviction rather than external pressure, the new mindset becomes stronger. Another crucial mindset shift is reframing criticism as feedback for growth. Approval seekers view criticism as rejection, which threatens their sense of worth. Respecters view criticism as information that, when valid, can help them improve. This doesn't mean all criticism is constructive or should be accepted. It means developing the discernment to extract value from feedback without being defined by it. I work with a writer who would be devastated by even minor criticism of her work. She would spend days recovering from a single negative comment, even when surrounded by positive ones. We worked on shifting her mindset to see criticism as specific to her work, not a judgment of her value as a person. We also practiced evaluating feedback objectively. Was it accurate? Was it actionable? Was it coming from someone whose opinion was relevant to her goals? Over time, she developed the ability to receive criticism without being crushed by it. Her writing improved, and ironically, she began receiving more positive recognition precisely because she was able to use criticism constructively. Developing mental toughness is another key aspect of the respect-earning mindset. Mental toughness is the ability to maintain your commitment to your values and vision despite opposition, setbacks, or temporary failures. It's not about being hard or insensitive. It's about being resilient and steadfast. Mental toughness grows through challenges. Each time you choose your values over approval, you strengthen this quality. Each time you persist despite criticism, you build resilience. The respected leader isn't one who has never faced opposition. It's one who has faced it repeatedly and remained true to their principles. A powerful exercise for transforming your mindset is to identify and challenge approval-seeking thoughts. When you catch yourself thinking, what will they think if I do this? Or I need their validation to feel good about this decision. Pause and reframe. Ask instead, what do I believe is the right thing to do? And how does this align with my values and purpose? Remember that mindset transformation is a process, not an event. You won't eliminate all approval-seeking thoughts overnight. But with awareness and practice, you can gradually shift your dominant thought patterns from seeking approval to earning respect, both from others and, most importantly, from yourself. The journey from approval seeking to respect earning doesn't happen by accident. It requires intentional action and consistent practice. So what practical steps can you take to break free from approval addiction and embrace the path of respect? First, conduct an approval audit. Examine your decisions, relationships, and behaviors. Where are you compromising your values for approval? Are there relationships where you consistently feel you can't be yourself? Are there situations where you regularly say yes when you want to say no? Identifying these patterns is the first step to changing them. Second, clarify your personal standards. What values are non-negotiable for you? What behaviors will you no longer tolerate from yourself or others? What kind of legacy do you want to leave? Write these down and review them regularly. They will serve as your compass when the winds of approval seeking begin to blow. Third, practice small acts of authenticity. You don't have to transform your entire life overnight. Start with minor decisions where the stakes are lower. Express your genuine opinion in a discussion instead of agreeing with the majority. Decline an invitation to an event you don't want to attend. Each small act of authenticity builds confidence for larger ones. Fourth, surround yourself with respect-oriented people. Jim famously said that we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. If your inner circle is filled with approval seekers, you'll naturally gravitate toward those behaviors. Seek relationships with people who value authenticity and principle-based living. Fifth, embrace responsibility. Approval seekers often blame others for their choices. I had to do it because they expected it. Respect earners take full ownership of their decisions. I chose this because it aligns with my values. This shift from blaming to owning is crucial for building self-respect. Finally, commit to continuous growth. The path to earning respect isn't about achieving perfection. It's about embracing progress. Each day, strive to be a little more authentic, a little more aligned with your values, a little less concerned with temporary approval, and more focused on lasting respect. Let me tell you something powerful. Every time you compromise your values for approval, you lose a piece of yourself. Every time you stand firm in your values despite disapproval, you become stronger. This strength, this inner power, is what people ultimately respect. They might not always verbalize it, but they feel it. They sense when someone is unshakable, when someone cannot be bought with flattery or intimidated by rejection. I've seen it time and again. The person who chases approval may gain temporary popularity, but they rarely make history. The person who earns respect, often through standing alone when necessary, is the one who creates lasting change. Think about the people you deeply respect. Are they people pleasers, or are they individuals of conviction? Do they bend with every wind of opinion, or do they stand firm on the foundation of their values? Understand this: your need for approval is directly proportional to your clarity of purpose. The clearer you are about why you're here and what you meant to contribute, the less you'll need others to validate your path. This is why purpose discovery is not optional. It's essential for breaking free from approval addiction. When you face resistance, and you will face resistance if you're doing anything significant, remember that opposition doesn't mean you're wrong. It often means you're making an impact. The same people who criticize you today may be the ones who study your methods tomorrow. Don't let their temporary disapproval distract you from your eternal purpose. Remember, respect isn't just about how others see you. It's about how you see yourself. When you look in the mirror, do you respect the person looking back? Do you honor their values, admire their courage, and appreciate their authenticity? If not, today is the day to begin changing that. The world doesn't need more approval seekers. It needs leaders who stand for something bigger than popularity. Leaders who are willing to speak truth, live with integrity, and make decisions based on principles rather than pressure. It needs you living authentically, creating value, and earning respect through the courage to be who you were designed to be. So I challenge you today. Stop chasing approval. Start earning respect. The journey may not be easy, but I promise you this, it will be worth it. Because a life of authentic impact, guided by purpose and principle, will always be more fulfilling than a life of perpetual people-pleasing. The choice is yours. Will you continue the exhausting pursuit of everyone's approval? Or will you embrace the liberating path of earning genuine respect? Choose wisely, because that choice will determine not just how others see you, but how you see yourself, and ultimately the impact you'll have on this world. Stand up, step out, live authentically. The respect will follow.